I sat in the back row of courtroom for B, watching my father's attorney arrange stacks of paper on the plaintiff's table. Dad didn't look at me. He hadn't looked at me since Mom's funeral 3 months ago. Not when he filed the lawsuit. Not when his lawyers served me papers at my office. Not now. The bailiff announced, Judge Morrison. Everyone stood. The judge was maybe 60, with silver hair and reading glasses perched on his nose. He looked at the case file with the expression of someone already bored. Estate dispute, cite flatly. Sarah Chun, deceased. Petitioner claims undue influence by the respondent daughter. He glanced up at me. This should be straightforward. My attorney, Rebecca Lynn, touched my arm gently. She was a law school friend who specialized in estate litigation. When I called her about the lawsuit, she'd said, Your father is claiming you manipulated your dying mother. This is going to get ugly. She wasn't wrong. Dad's attorney stood, Martin Fletcher, 60s, Harvard law class ring, the kind of lawyer who charged $800 an hour and made sure everyone knew it. Your Honor, this is a clear case of elder abuse and undue influence. Sarah Chun was a decorated military intelligence officer who served her country for 30 years. When she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, she was vulnerable. Medicated. Not in her right mind. I kept my hands folded in my lap. Didn't react. The respondent, Emma Chun, isolated Mrs. Chun from her family, prevented her husband of 35 years from visiting, moved her mother into her home under the guise of care while systematically poisoning her against her own husband and son. My brother Daniel sat next to Dad. He wouldn't look at me either. The golden child. The one Mom always had to defend. The one who showed up to the hospital twice in 6 months and thought that counted as being there. Fletcher continued, Mrs. Chun's original will, drafted 15 years ago, left her estate equally between her husband and 2 children. But 6 weeks before her death, a new will appeared. This will leaves everything: the house, the investment accounts, the life insurance, all totaling $2.1 million entirely to the respondent. Nothing to her husband, nothing to her son. Judge Morrison frowned. And you're alleging the respondent coerced her mother? We re-alleging that Emma Chun took advantage of her mother's compromised mental state to steal a multi-million-dollar inheritance from her rightful heirs. Rebecca stood smoothly. Your Honor, we have medical records, testimony from Mrs. Chun's oncologist, and the attorney who drafted the will. All will confirm that Mrs. Chun was of sound mind and made her decisions freely. The judge waved his hand. Save it for trial. Mr. Fletcher, what's your evidence of undue influence? Fletcher smiled. That's when I knew he had something. We have testimony from the decedent's husband and son that Emma prevented them from seeing Mrs. Chun in her final months. We have medical records showing Mrs. Chun was on significant pain medication. And we have this. He held up a document, Mrs. Chun's personal journal, recovered from her home. In it, she expresses confusion about her medications, fear that she's not thinking clearly, and concern that Emma is pressuring her about financial matters. My stomach dropped. Mom's journal, the one she kept on her nightstand, I'd read it after she died, but I'd never seen those entries, because they didn't exist. Rebecca stood quickly. Your Honor, we haven't been provided this journal in discovery. This is highly irregular. We obtained it yesterday from Mr. Chun's home. Fletcher interrupted. It was mixed in with items he took from the house after his wife's death. We're submitting it now as newly discovered evidence. Judge Morrison looked annoyed. I'll allow it. We'll address discovery violations if needed. Let me see the journal. The bailiff brought it to the bench. The judge flipped through it, reading. His frown deepened. This is concerning. The decedent writes here about feeling pressured, about confusion regarding her finances, about Emma telling her that her husband was trying to steal from her. He looked at me over his reading glasses. This doesn't look good for you, Miss Chun. I said nothing. My heart was pounding, but I kept my face neutral. Mom taught me that. Stay calm under pressure. Never let them see you panic. Fletcher sensed blood in the water. Your Honor, this journal makes it clear that Emma Chun engaged in a systematic campaign to alienate her mother from her family and manipulate her into changing her will. We're asking the court to invalidate the recent will and reinstate the original distribution. Rebecca was on her feet. Your Honor, we need time to examine this journal. To verify its authenticity, it's my wife's handwriting, Dad said suddenly. His voice was rough. I'd know it anywhere. The judge nodded. It appears authentic to me as well. Ms. Lin, your client isolated a dying woman, fed her paranoid delusions about her own husband, and convinced her to disinherit her family. The evidence is quite damning. That's not what happened, I said quietly. Everyone looked at me. Rebecca touched my arm in warning, but I was done being silent. That's not what happened, I repeated, louder this time. Judge Morrison's expression was somewhere between pity and disgust. Ms. Chun, I understand you cared for your mother, but taking advantage of a vulnerable person, regardless of your relationship, is unacceptable. Elder abuse is a serious matter. I didn't abuse my mother. I protected her. Protected her from her own husband. The judge's voice was sharp now. From her son? That's what abusers always say. Dad's attorney leaned back in his chair, satisfied. Daniel smirked. Dad just stared at the table. My phone buzzed in my purse. Then again, I ignored it. Judge Morrison closed the journal. I'm prepared to make a preliminary ruling. Based on this evidence, I find sufficient grounds to invalidate the recent will and Your Honor. My voice cut through the courtroom. May I approach the bench? The judge looked surprised. Rebecca stood quickly. Your Honor, may we have a moment with our client? No, I said. I need to speak with you now. Privately. Judge Morrison frowned. Ms. Chun, that's highly unusual. I have information relevant to this case. Information about my mother's military service, classified information. The courtroom went very quiet. Fletcher laughed. Your Honor, this is a delay tactic. The respondent is grasping at straws. It's about Operation Midnight Rose, I said clearly. I watched Judge Morrison's face. For just a second, something flickered behind his eyes. Recognition, maybe fear? Approach? He said quietly. Rebecca and I walked to the bench. Fletcher followed, looking confused. Dad was whispering urgently with Daniel. Judge Morrison leaned forward. His voice was barely above a whisper. What did you just say? Operation Midnight Rose, I repeated softly. My mother was part of it. From 1994 to 2003. She was the lead intelligence analyst. The judge's face had gone pale. How do you know that name? Because she told me. 6 weeks before she died, when she changed her will? Fletcher looked between us, frustrated. Your Honor, what is this about? What operation? It's classified, Judge Morrison said sharply. Mr. Fletcher, step back. Your Honor, I have a right to hear step back, Counselor. Now, Fletcher retreated, anger radiating off him. The judge looked at me with new eyes. Calculating. Worried. You're claiming your mother disclosed classified information to you. I'm claiming my mother had very good reasons for the decisions she made. Reasons that had nothing to do with undue influence or confusion. Reasons she could unput in the will itself because they involve national security matters that are still classified. I held his gaze. Reasons you understand, Your Honor. Because you were there too. You were military intelligence. Army. Stationed at Fort Meade in the late 90s. I'd done my homework on Judge Morrison after we drew him for this case. His military record was public. What he'd worked on was not. The judge's jaw tightened. That's enough. Both of you, back to your tables. I need a recess. Your Honor, Fletcher started. 30 minutes? We're in recess! Judge Morrison stood abruptly and disappeared into his chambers. The courtroom erupted in confused whispers. Dad was on his feet, trying to get to me, but the bailiff blocked his path. Daniel was yelling something. Rebecca grabbed my arm. Emma, what the hell was that? What's Operation Midnight Rose? I'll tell you in the hall. We pushed through the courtroom doors. Dad's voice followed us. Emma, what are you doing? What are you talking about? In the hallway, Rebecca pulled me aside. Talk. Now. Mom was military intelligence. You knew that. Yes, everyone knows that. It's in all the paperwork. What people don't know is what she actually did. Most of her service is still classified. Operation Midnight Rose was a counterintelligence operation in the 90 Segundas. I do want to know the details. She couldn't tell me most of it, but it involved identifying moles in defense contractor firms who were selling information to foreign governments. Rebecca's eyes widened, and the judge was part of it. I don't know for certain, but his service record places him at Fort Meade during the right time frame, and when I said the name, he recognized it immediately. So, this is what? A leverage play. No. This is the truth. I took a breath. 6 weeks before Mom died, she told me things. Things about Dad. Things she'd never told anyone. What things? My phone buzzed again. I pulled it out. 3 missed calls from a Washington, D.C. number I didn't recognize. Then a text came through. Ms. Chun, this is Colonel Martinez, Defense Intelligence Agency. We need to speak immediately regarding matters discussed in court today. Do not continue this conversation in public. Call me. I showed Rebecca. Her face went white. Oh my God. Emma, did you just trigger a national security review? Maybe. You just mentioned a classified operation in open court. I mentioned the name. I didn't disclose anything operational. That might be enough too. She stopped. Dad and Daniel were coming down the hall, Fletcher trailing them. Dad grabbed my shoulders. Emma, what is this nonsense about classified operations? Your mother was an analyst. She filed paperwork. This is some fantasy you've concocted to get your hands off me. He dropped his hands like I'd burned him. Mom was a lot more than an analyst. Dad, but you wouldn't know that, would you? Because she never told you. She couldn't. You didn't have clearance. Daniel stepped forward. This is insane. Mom wrote in her journal that you were manipulating her. We have proof. That journal is fake. Everyone stared at me. That's Mom's handwriting, Dad said quietly. I know my wife's handwriting. The handwriting is real. The entries are not. Mom kept journals her whole life. 23 of TM. I have them all. She gave them to me the week before she died. I looked at Dad. But you wouldn't know about those journals either. Because Mom knew you'd read them. She knew you'd use anything in them against her. That's a lie, Daniel snapped. Dad loved Mom. He would never. Dad had an affair with his secretary in 2015. Mom found out. She forgave him. He promised it was over. I looked at Dad. His face was gray. It wasn't over. You were still seeing Christine when Mom got her diagnosis. She found the hotel receipts, the text messages, all of it. Dad's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Fletcher recovered first. This is slander. You can't prove any of this. I can. Mom documented everything. She was intelligence, remember. She knew how to collect evidence. She had photos, bank statements, a private investigator's report. I pulled a folder from my bag. She never confronted you, Dad. She didn't have the energy while fighting cancer. But she made sure I knew. She made sure someone would know what you'd done. I handed the folder to Rebecca. She opened it, skimmed the contents, and her expression hardened. Your Honor needs to see this, she said. The bailiff appeared in the hallway. Judge Morrison is ready, back in the courtroom. Judge Morrison looked like he'd aged 10 years in 30 minutes. There were 2 people in suits sitting in the gallery now who hadn't been there before. Federal agents, probably, or DIA offices. The text from Colonel Martinez made sense now. The judge cleared his throat. We've had some developments during the recess. First, I've been contacted by the Defense Intelligence Agency regarding comments made in this courtroom about classified matters. They've requested that certain topics not be discussed further in open court. Fletcher stood. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. The respondent is clearly using, sit down, Mr. Fletcher. The judge's voice was ice. I'm not finished, Fletcher sat. Second, I've reviewed additional evidence provided by Ms. Chun's attorney during the recess. Evidence regarding the petitioner's conduct during his wife's illness. Judge Morrison looked at my father with open disdain. Evidence that fundamentally changes the context of this case. Dad's face was pale. Your Honor, I don't know what lies my daughter has been telling, but the affair with Christine Wade, the hotel stays charged to your joint credit card while your wife was undergoing chemotherapy. The $67,000 you withdrew from your joint savings account, Mrs. Chun's, savings from her military pension to lease a Mercedes for Ms. Wade. The judge read from the papers Rebecca had given him. Should I continue? Daniel had his head in his hands. Dad just stared at the table. Your Honor, Fletcher said desperately, even if there were marital issues, that doesn't invalidate our claim of undue influence regarding the will. No, but the journal does. Judge Morrison held up the leather journal Dad's attorney had presented. I had my clerk examine this during recess. The entries about Emma supposedly manipulating her mother, they're written in different ink. The journal is authentic. Mrs. Chun's handwriting is authentic, but these specific entries were added recently. After Mrs. Chun's death, the courtroom exploded. The bailiff called for order. Fletcher was on his feet. Your Honor, we had no knowledge if there was tampering. It wasn't done by us or our client. Someone wrote false entries in a deceased woman's journal and presented it as evidence in court. Judge Morrison's voice could have cut glass. That's fraud. That's perjury. That's potentially criminal. Dad found his voice. I didn't write anything in that journal. I found it in the house. It was exactly as I gave it to my attorney. You took that journal from Mom's nightstand the day after her funeral, I said. I was there. I watched you go through her things. You spent 20 minutes alone in her bedroom before Daniel and I came upstairs. So? Daniel demanded. He was collecting his wife's personal effects. He was looking for her real journals. The ones where she documented his affair. The ones where she wrote about her decision to cut him out of the will. The ones I'd already taken. I looked at Dad. You didn't find what you were looking for, so you created something instead. Dad's attorney was frantically whispering to him. Rebecca leaned close to me. Did you know he'd present a fake journal? I suspected he'd try something, Mom warned me. She said Dad would fight this. That he'd lie. That I'd need to be ready. Judge Morrison removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. Mr. Chun, do you know the penalties for submitting fraudulent evidence to this court? Your Honor, I maintain. I submitted that journal in good faith. If there were alterations, they were done before I found it. Bailiff, please escort Mr. Chun and his attorney to speak with the 2 DAA officers in the gallery. They have questions about how a classified operations name came to be discussed in open court. The 2 men in suits stood. Dad's face went from pale to green. Your Honor, I don't know anything about any classified operation. I was never military. I never had clearance. I shouldn't be held responsible for you filed a lawsuit claiming your wife wasn't of sound mind. You presented evidence suggesting she was confused and paranoid. You brought her military service into question. Judge Morrison's voice was steel. The DA would like to discuss with you what your wife may have told you about her work. What you may have overheard. What you may have disclosed to your attorney or others. Dad looked panicked. She never told me anything. 35 years of marriage, and she barely mentioned her work. I don't know anything classified. Then this should be a short conversation. The 2 DIA officers approached. One of them, a woman with gray hair and a no-nonsense expression, spoke quietly to Dad and Fletcher. They left the courtroom together. Daniel started to follow, but the bailiff stopped him. Judge Morrison looked at me. Miss Chun, you and I are going to have a conversation in chambers after this hearing. You mentioned a classified operation in open court. That's a serious matter. Yes, Your Honor, I understand. Do you? Because if you improperly disclosed classified information, even if you heard it from your mother, there could be consequences. My mother told me the name of the operation she worked on. She didn't tell me anything operational. She didn't tell me anything that would compromise national security. She told me because she wanted me to understand why she made the decisions she made, why she didn't trust my father, why she needed to protect certain information even from her own family. The judge studied me. Why didn't she trust your father? Because 15 years ago, someone tried to bribe him for information about her work. They knew she was intelligence. They knew she worked on sensitive projects. They approached him at his office, offered him $50,000 for anything he could tell them about her assignments. The courtroom was dead silent. Dad turned them down. Mom verified that through her contacts, he never took the money. But he also never told Mom about the approach. She found out from her security team during a periodic review. That's when she realized that even though Dad had been loyal, he'd also been a potential vulnerability her entire career. That's when she started keeping certain things from him. I looked at Daniel. That's why she never told you much either. Because you tell Dad everything. You always have. She couldn't risk it. Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it. Your Honor, Rebecca said, we'd like to submit the 23 authentic journals Mrs. Chun kept over her lifetime. In them, she details her marriage, her military career, her cancer diagnosis and treatment, and her decision-making process regarding her will. You'll find no confusion, no diminished capacity, just a clear-minded woman, making difficult choices about her legacy. She placed a banker's box on the table, 23 leather-bound journals, all of them filled with Mom's neat handwriting. Judge Morrison looked at the box, then at me. You've been carrying these around. My mother gave them to me 6 weeks before she died. She said, Emma, when your father challenges the will and I'll need these. They're the truth. They're my voice when I'm gone. My voice cracked slightly. She knew exactly what would happen. She knew he'd claim I manipulated her. She knew he'd fight. She prepared me for all of it. The judge was quiet for a long moment. I'm going to need to review these journals, all of them. Of course, Your Honor. I'm also going to need testimony from Mrs. Chun's oncologist, her attorney, and anyone else who interacted with her in her final months. I need to be absolutely certain of her mental state. We have all of that prepared, Rebecca said. Dr. Patterson, her oncologist, has submitted an affidavit stating that Mrs. Chun was cognitively intact until the final week of her life. The will was changed 2 months before that. Attorney Williams, who drafted the new will testify that Mrs. Chun was clear, firm, and specific about her wishes. She met with him 3 times. Each time, he evaluated her capacity and found her fully competent. The judge nodded slowly. Here's what's going to happen. This case is continued for 60 days. I'm going to read every one of these journals. I'm going to review all medical records. I'm going to interview everyone involved. And Mr. Chun, he looked at the door where my father had exited, will need to explain the fraudulent journal to my satisfaction or face criminal charges. Your Honor, Rebecca said carefully, given the evidence of Mr. Chun's affair and financial misconduct, we'd like to request that the court also consider whether he is entitled to any portion of the estate. Mrs. Chun's decision to disinherit him appears well-founded. I'll take that under advisement. But first, I need to understand what actually happened during Mrs. Chun's final months. I need to hear her voice through these journals. He looked at me. Ms. Chun, you're taking a significant risk here. If these journals do you and support your version of events, if there is any indication you influenced your mother improperly, you'll face serious consequences. I understand, Your Honor. The truth is in those pages, all of it. Then I'll see you back here in 60 days. This hearing is adjourned. In the hallway, Daniel caught up with me. Rebecca tensed, ready to intervene, but I waved her off. Is it true? Daniel asked quietly. The affair? I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know. I believed him. Daniel was the golden child, but he wasn't cruel. Just oblivious. It's true. Mom found out 2 years ago. She tried to work through it with him, but he wouldn't stop seeing Christine. Even when Mom was dying, he was still sneaking away to see her. Daniel's face crumpled. Why didn't she tell me? Because you would have told Dad she knew. You would have tried to fix it. To mediate. To make everyone happy. That's what you do. I would have. He stopped. Yeah. I probably would have. Mom loved you. She didn't want to put you in that position. But she also couldn't trust you with the truth, so she told me instead. And now Dad's going to lose everything. He lost Mom's trust years ago. The estate is just the paperwork. Daniel looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. I always thought you were the difficult one, the one who couldn't just get along with everyone, but you were the only one Mom trusted, the only one who actually knew her. She was my mother. I paid attention. He nodded slowly. What's going to happen to Dad? That depends on whether he wrote those fake journal entries himself or had someone else do it. Either way, the will is going to stand. Mom's wishes are clear in her real journals. Dad's not getting her money. What about me? I looked at him. My younger brother. Mom's baby. The one she'd covered for, protected, enabled for 32 years. What do you think you deserve, Daniel? He flinched. I don't know. I wasn't a great son. I wasn't there much when she was sick. I let Dad convince me you were the problem, that you were isolating Mom from us. I didn't question it. No, you didn't. But I loved her. I did love her. I know. And I did. Daniel loved Mom the way he loved everything, casually, carelessly, confident it would always be there. He'd never imagined she'd cut him out. Never imagined there would be consequences for taking her for granted. The will leaves everything to me, I said. But there's a letter from Mom. Instructions for me. She says I should help you if you ask for it. If you acknowledge what happened. If you do better. What kind of help? You've got $28,000 in credit card debt. That new car you can't really afford. I can help with that. Once. And then you figure out how to be an actual adult. Hit a budget, stop living like money doesn't matter. Mom enabled your carelessness your whole life. I'm not going to do that. Daniel was quiet for a long time. Then, okay, I'll take the help. One time, and I'll figure out the rest. I studied his face. He looked younger than 32, suddenly. Scared, real. All right, we'll talk after the hearing in 60 days. Once this is all settled. He nodded and walked away. Shoulders slumped. Rebecca joined me. That was generous, after everything. He's not a bad person. He's just been spoiled his whole life. Maybe this will wake him up. And your father? He made his choices. He can live with them. My phone rang. The Washington, D.C. number. Colonel Martinez. I should take this. Should I stay? No. Go home. I'll call you later. Rebecca squeezed my shoulder and left. I answered the phone. Ms. Chun, this is Colonel Martinez. I need to speak with you about the comments you made in court today regarding Operation Midnight Rose. Yes, Colonel, I'm happy to speak with you. Good. Because right now, there are several very concerned people in Washington who want to know exactly what your mother told you. Can you come to D.C. tomorrow? Yes. Excellent. I'm sending you an address. Come alone. Bring any documentation your mother left you regarding her service. We need to verify what information may have been disclosed and assess any potential security risks. My mother didn't tell me anything operational, Colonel, just enough to understand why she made certain decisions. We'll determine that. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. The call ended. I stood in the empty courthouse hallway and let myself feel it. The weight of the last 3 months. The grief, the exhaustion. The anger. Mom had prepared me for this fight. She'd given me the tools. The journals. The evidence. The code phrase that made Judge Morrison realize who she'd been and what she'd died on for this country. But she couldn't prepare me for how it would feel to fight my own family, to watch my father's face when his lies collapsed, to see my brother realize our mother hadn't trusted him with the truth. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Emma, this is Dr. Sarah's friend from the agency. Heard you mention Midnight Rose today. Bold move. Your mother would be proud. She trained you well. If you need anything in DC, call me. A phone number followed. I stared at the text. Mom's friend, from the agency. Someone who knew about Operation Midnight Rose? Someone who knew Mom had trained me for this. Because she had trained me, every time I'd asked about her work as a kid, she'd said, intelligence is about having information others don't have. It's about staying calm when others panic. It's about always being 3 steps ahead. She'd taught me to document everything. To stay calm under pressure. To never show my hand until the perfect moment. She'd taught me how to win a war without ever raising my voice. I walked out of the courthouse into the afternoon sun. In 60 days, the judge would rule. The will would stand. The truth would be official record. But the truth was already out there. Dad's affair, his theft from Mom's pension, his fraudulent evidence, all of it exposed in open court. Mom had spent 30 years keeping secrets to protect national security. In the end, the only secret that mattered was the one Dad thought he could keep forever. Betrayal. She'd taken that secret to her grave, but she'd made sure I could tell it for her. I got in my car and started the engine. Tomorrow, I'd go to Washington. I'd answer Colonel Martinez's questions. I'd prove I wasn't a security risk, but tonight, I was going to Mom's favorite restaurant. The one Dad never liked. The one he always complained was too expensive, too fancy, too much trouble. I was going to order her favorite meal, pour a glass of her favorite wine, and I was going to read her journals, all 23 of them, because they weren't just evidence in a court case. They were her voice, her story, her truth, and she'd trusted me to protect it, just like she'd protected so many secrets for so many years. I got it, Mom, I whispered. I got them all. The will, the truth, everything. Somewhere, I thought she was smiling, and somewhere, probably in Fletcher's overpriced office, my father was realizing what it cost to underestimate a woman trained by military intelligence. What it cost to lie to your dying wife. What it cost to bet against your daughter in a fight she'd spent 6 months preparing for. Mom used to say, in intelligence, the winner isn't the one who shoots first, it's the one who planned better. Dad never planned for this. But Mom and I did, and in 60 days, when Judge Morrison read the final entry in Mom's last journalda, one where she explained exactly why she made her choice everyone would understand, she hadn't been confused. She hadn't been manipulated. She'd been crystal clear, and she'd been 3 steps ahead the whole time.